All right, folks, let's dive into this. How soon can you expect to see results when you start sourcing for deals, when you start sourcing for motivated sellers, companies that might want to exit in any sector, geography, whatever? I will give you my insights after sourcing deals for many companies globally, including private equity, search funds, strategic buyers, family offices, and also advisors and brokerage firms. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marco Palmero. My company, Ulysses, does origination for these businesses that I just mentioned. And one of the questions that I get asked a lot by people that sometimes are buying a company for the first time, or maybe they're not familiar with the sourcing process for deals, at least when it comes to off-market transactions, is the question of, how soon can I see results? When is the pipeline gonna build up and start to deliver off-market opportunities to me? Well, the short answer would be it depends. And if you're satisfied with it, you can just close the video and move on. But if you want a little bit more insight, I'm going to share some of the things that you need to consider and why the answer in most instances is it depends. Now, the first thing that I want to discuss is where is this question coming from? In most instances, what I see is that people asking this type of question have some sort of insecurity about whether or not they can deliver on a deal. And in some instances, they might also be working on a very tight time constraint. As a consequence, their entire decision-making process is kind of skewed, and they don't have the ability to accommodate for time for a process to pay out. And what happens, in some of these cases, is that you see maybe search funds that need to close a deal, or the fund is gonna finish the allocation period. Private equity groups that might need to close deals before the end of the year to show returns to the investors. You see all of these scenarios where people stop thinking rationally and they just start thinking emotionally because they have some sort of deadline. And so they ask this question because they would like the process to be faster than it can actually be. So first point and most important thing is that if you are asking this question from a position of kind of like insecurity, or because you're not sure you can pull out a deal within a certain time frame, chances are no answer is going to help you, because sourcing deals is not an exact science where you can put in X and you get out Y. It is a process, a continuous process that you need to go through to build a pipeline that will mature over time and then deliver these deals for you. But if you need to close a deal, let's say in the next 30 days, it's going to be very unlikely for you to clearly predict how many companies you can find within that time frame, and how many are going to be good and how many you're going to be able to close. Why is that? Well, many different reasons. First, we cannot tell what the market conditions are. We cannot predict how many people within your target geography are going to be interested in selling that company or these businesses at any given time. We cannot tell whether or not these companies are going to match your selection criteria and therefore pass your qualification kind of like a filter. We cannot tell whether or not you're going to come into an agreement on pricing and ultimately end up negotiating an actual deal. So there are a lot of different variables that can influence time frame in the results that you can start to see. Now, some of you might say, well, Marco, I don't want to necessarily go too deep into that. I just want to focus on when can I start seeing opportunities that come through that are just people that manifested some sort of interest in potentially exiting their business. And again, the answer to that is it depends. What type of sector are you targeting? What is the geography that you're targeting? How aggressive do you want to be in your strategy for sourcing deals? What is the value proposition that you're offering to these people? Are you going to be a sales side advisor? Are you going to be a buyer? Are you going to be a private equity group that is consolidating assets? All these variables are going to contribute to the speed at which you can originate these opportunities and get these yeses from business owners. To the same degree that I mentioned a few minutes ago, the market itself might not be in the right position. It might not be at a current stage in a place where a lot of business owners are looking to exit. It might not be a buyer's market, but it might be a seller's market, vice versa. So tons of different variables that can influence the timeline in the time frame for sourcing these deals and starting to see the opportunities. Now, in my experience, if you start building a pipeline in the right way, within 15, 20 days, you can start to see people that manifest some sort of interest and share that they have thought about selling the business in the past, they're considering it, they would be interested in having a conversation. So within that time frame, you can start to see a little bit of traction. Now, from a little bit of traction to a full pipeline, we're talking about two completely different things. And that all comes down to, one, the volume that you're generating, how specific you are in your targeting, as I just said, and also what's the overall strategy behind it? How many channels are you using to reach out to these people? How much leverage can you put into that? And ultimately, is your kind of like thesis for acquisition sound? So you're targeting a sector where is actually likely to, where you're actually likely to find business acquisitions. That's what I'm trying to say. So first few opportunities, certainly 15, 20 days, if you build the pipeline correctly, you can start to see a little bit of traction. Then it becomes a question of how many deals you actually need to see in order to find qualified opportunities. And that only you can tell depending on how specific you want to be in your filtering criteria. Some people might be okay with assets that are both profitable and unprofitable. Others might just want to focus on profitable assets. Then when it comes to profitability, some might want certain levels of profitability, employee threshold, geography, customer concentration. All these sorts of things can stretch the time by a lot, because for one person that has a little bit of a loose buy box, so to speak, virtually everybody that comes in the funnel, and that has been filtered correctly when we were populating a list, is likely going to be a fit. So if we say 80% of the people that reply, yes, I'm interested, are going to be a fit, if we get 100 yeses, 80 are going to be qualified, that's pretty good, right? So you have 80 opportunities that you can analyze. If you're very selective in your approach and maybe only 40% are coming through the initial filtering and screening process, then out of 100, again, you're only going to get 40. So it's half of what the other guy was getting. Now, why is that important? Well, because let's say that only 10% of these deals move to the next phase, which is the LOI and negotiations. One guy is going to have 8 opportunities, the other is going to have only 4. And let's say that, out of these, I don't know, only 20% of them close. Well, on one side, we might be talking about 2 deals that have the potential of actually, being closed. On the other side, we might be talking about half a deal that has the potential of being closed. So not even one. And you will forgive the math, but what I'm trying to say is that in some instances you might not have enough volume to get to the bottom of the funnel and ultimately find that deal that you can actually close, or these deals, if you're looking for more, that you can ultimately close. That will stretch your timeline by a lot, sensibly. And the idea there is, okay, how can we mitigate for that? If I'm very selective in the way I'm filtering for companies, maybe I can be a little bit more accommodating on the geography side so that we can include more businesses in different states, in different countries, in different regions, and ultimately solve for that bottleneck that we have that is a very tight filtering mechanism. On the flip side, if I don't have that issue, but I'm very specific on the geography side, so maybe I just want to buy businesses, let's say, in Miami or in South Florida, then I can be a little bit more accommodating on the filtering side to ultimately get more opportunities through. All of this, of course, is mindful of the fact that you might want to get results faster. If you're okay with a timeline that is reasonable and that is kind of like benchmarked for a deal that actually needs to close, then you don't have these sort of issues. But I'm starting with the assumption that the question that has been asked, that is, how long would it take to start to see results? And I'm starting with the assumption this question is asked because people want to get deals faster. And so how can you accelerate the time frame? Those are some ideas. But in a nutshell, you can't really force the process too much, because you're going to need to accommodate for time to go through all the steps of building the relationship with the seller, negotiating, reviewing the financials. And that is not really something that you can control, because there are a lot of moving parts in the deal, and ultimately you got to be okay with it. So you're going to be prepared to wait for that cycle to pay out. And that's why I always stress the concept and the fact that you need to have, one, your own infrastructure, and two, a deal flow pipeline that sources deals on your behalf off market, so that you can build something that is consistent over time. And as you start negotiating some deals that you might have sourced 3 months ago, you're still adding opportunities to the pipeline, so that if those fall apart for whatever reason, you don't need to wait for other transactions to mature, because you already put them into the funnel to mature, and they're coming in every month, so that you can cycle them through. And so the idea there is, okay, the acquisition process has a set timeline that you cannot control, unless, of course, you might find a very motivated seller, or maybe you have capital readily available and you can close your eyes on some red flags. But from a technical standpoint, there are some steps that you need to take and that you cannot skip. So you need to accept that, at least from my perspective. And the only thing we can do is to work around these time frames to make sure we can control what we can control. And one of the things that we can control is the amount of opportunities we have in the pipeline, and how many are being nurtured every month, so that they can come through consistently. That, after the initial 14, 20 days that I mentioned, when you start to see opportunity comes through, can take anything between 30 more days, 60 more days, 90 more days. It all depends on a lot of different things. As I said, the filtering mechanism, also the maturity of these sellers, because some people that you might get into your funnel might be ready to exit right away because they've matured the decision months before. Others might just be at the beginning of the cycle, so they might need a little bit of education around the process and maybe understand what's the best solution for them. And so, again, as I mentioned, it was like a very long video talking about a lot of different things, but the answer itself is what I shared with you in the very beginning. It all depends. There are too many variables involved, and it's hard to give a predetermined answer to a time frame question. And probably if you got these types of answers from somebody, well, one, they might be lying, or two, maybe they promised something and then you saw, and maybe you realized by yourself that they weren't able to deliver on that promise, because timelines generally get stretched. So the first thing that I feel we can all agree on, and that I would encourage everybody to think about, is we always gonna start thinking that, we need to start the process thinking that a deal is gonna take significantly longer than we expect. Provided we enter the sourcing process, so we start identifying deals with that mindset, then we can work around all the things that we can control to shorten that time frame as much as possible. Again, build a pipeline that is proprietary to you, off-market deals, multiple channels, so that opportunities are coming to you from different resources. Then nurturing process for managing these deals almost on autopilot, and then kind of like a system that is streamlined in nature and that can enable you to allocate all your time towards moving the transactions that are good forward, instead of sourcing new ones and doing all these technical things that generally don't pay dividends to you. Too many people focus time on this last item and they don't spend time negotiating, and then they wonder why their system is broken. It's because they constantly source one deal, they focus all their time trying to close it, that deal fails, they didn't spend a lot of time building the pipeline, they need to start all over again, and they keep cycling through this process that is counterproductive for them, for their firm, if they are a small boutique shop, and is not delivering the outcomes they need. So timelines we need to accept are going to be longer than we can predict. How can we work around that? Pipeline that is streamlined, nurturing process that constantly brings deals into the funnel. And then I'd say a system that is predictable in nature to qualify deals, and then also keep deals that didn't pass the test in the loop, because not necessarily a deal that is a no today might, is going to be a no 12 months later. And so, especially if you're in the acquisition where to buy multiple businesses, creating a pipeline that is consistent over time and that nurtures even the no's that you got throughout the process is a very valuable thing for you to have. And so, thinking about the process and building up something that is sustainable over time, there are actually different ways you can go about doing that. You can build up your system internally. I've seen that a lot of times small companies, search funds, advisors don't have that internal infrastructure in place. I mean, they don't want to spend 100, 200 grand hiring analysts that are going to do the sourcing for them. And so they try to patch in a new deal flow either with their network, with relationships, or allocating part of their time in a day towards sourcing the opportunities. That is kind of like a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, because again, getting back to the initial question, how long would it take for us to start to see results in deals? If you spread your attention in many different directions, you're just killing your chances of sourcing deals in a reasonable time frame. It's going to take you much longer, and it's going to cost you a lot more in most instances. So solutions, as I said, an internal team, but some people might not want to accommodate for that because it's quite expensive. Outside support, like what we do, somebody that sources deals for you 24/7, so you can allocate your time on closing deals, and then you build a system that is predictable from that perspective, because you get the opportunities from us, we do the nurturing. Then once you have the lead in the pipeline, you can nurture the good relationships only, focus on closing them, and that's all you do basically. Or also an hybrid, so to speak, where you bridge the gap of knowledge that your team might have with resources that a company like ours might provide you. So some people say, okay, I don't want to hire an analyst that is going to cost me 100 grand, or maybe a team of analysts that's going to cost me 200-300 grand a year, and then teach them how to source deals. Because in some instances, maybe I don't know even, all the things that you should do in order to source deals correctly. But what I can do is have one person on my team allocate almost all his time towards this sourcing activity, and then have somebody external plug successful templates and systems into our business so that this person can become my internal resource, leverage this knowledge, and build it into our business so that it can then run continuously for us. That's another way you can do things, is like a hybrid model, where if I were to do it for you, or my company was to do it for you, we would step in, provide you all our SOP trainings, our system templates that you can plug and play into your business to build a full infrastructure that sources deals on your behalf, and teach your team how to manage that, from sourcing contacts, qualifying them, scripting, and then nurturing them, so that they can have full control over the process, and also SOPs to troubleshoot the issues. And then once they're done with it, you have a system that can run continuously, and you don't have a massive overhead of people that you brought in. Maybe you just have one person that is reallocated in your team. And that is kind of like something that can pay out for you long term. So those are some of the ways you can kind of like address the issue of timelines and timeframes. Although, again, as I said, deals will take longer. And if you are buying your first business, or you're not too familiar with acquisitions, you need to understand that a lot of things can go wrong. And so we have seen, so many instances where the pipeline that we created for clients was actually helping him a lot, because despite the fact he was committing to a deal, he also had other opportunities that were coming around. And that enabled him, one, to be more confident when he was negotiating because he knew he had options to choose from. Two, give them the leverage to potentially walk away from a deal because, again, he had other options. And also give them kind of like the ability to always have something on his plate. So if a deal was falling apart, the week after, he already had a new one he was negotiating. He didn't have to wait 4, 6, 8 weeks to get a new deal because the pipeline was working for him. It was kind of like a living organism that was constantly generating new deals. Interested in that? Check out the links below because that's a lot of what we do. But it's a long way for me to answer the question, how long should I wait before I start to see results in terms of deal sourcing process? That's, probably the best way I can answer this in a few minutes because it would take much longer to kind of dissect all the things that I shared in this video. By the way, this is also one of the reasons why people go to brokers because they feel that is going to be the easy way out. Like, I can go there, find businesses that are already listed, and therefore shorten the time frame. That's why a lot of people go down that avenue. Why do they get disappointed? Because then they realize that there are a lot of complexity in public deals, competition with other buyers that are bidding on the same deal, brokers that are unresponsive, or information that might not necessarily be accurate for the business. So all these things that happen after you start analyzing the deal create a kind of like timeline and stretch the timeline almost to a degree that it becomes longer than just sourcing the deals yourself off market and doing your own thing. So important to consider that because if you enter the broker arena with the wrong mindset and thinking it's going to take you just a few days to get a deal done, then you're going to be disappointed because when these bad things happen, then all your hopes and dreams fall apart. And we cannot plan for time, really. It's just a little thing that changes can compromise an entire deal. We need to be mindful of that. What we can plan for is preventing us from putting all our eggs in one basket and just committing to one deal that then is going to waste 6 months of our time. And by having a constant pipeline of deals, we can solve for that. And also, after the process is running, have a constant cadence of deals that are coming through. The first stage is always the most painful because you're activating a machine that then needs to start pumping out results, and it takes a bit of time for it to pay out, especially if you're building on your own. If you're doing it with somebody like us, it might take less time because we already have everything in place. But still, once you have it in place, then you can start to see results and things will start to spiral upwards and hopefully bring you more deals that you can handle. By the way, if interested in that, check out the link below, schedule a session to see how we can potentially help you. We're generally booked up for most of what we do, but provided we have slots available, we can look at solutions to support you, provided, of course, what you're looking to accomplish, deals you're looking to find are something we can help with. So check out the link below and we will see you, and I will see you in the next